Okay, we left off the other day with Gandalf falling into the abyss of Khazad-dûm, and the rest of them escape. And in the chapter Lothlórien, a few pages into it, several pages into it, they meet up with Haldir. This is after the page with the long bit of poem that we hear, or the long bit of song that Legolas sings. A couple pages after that. They run into Haldir, and Legolas explains who the travelers are, that there are 8 of them. Myself, 4 hobbits, 2 men, one of whom, Aragorn, elf friend of the folk of Westernessa. And Haldir goes, okay, well that's 7. And the 8th is a dwarf. A dwarf? That is not well. We have not had dealings, blah, blah, blah. And we go back to the Silmarillion. Okay, because this is the racism, if you want, that has been prevalent in Middle-earth for thousands of years. So in order to get Gimli to the city of what are called the Galadriel, that is the people of Lothlórien and such, to Cairn Amroth, Gimli has got to be blindfolded. In order to let Gimli be blindfolded, Aragorn proposes that they all be blindfolded. Who obviously is going to have a difficulty with this? Why? Okay, he's an elf.
And why would an elf blindfold himself on behalf of the Lord? He's like, that's dumb. Gimli's the only way he has to be blindfolded.
What kind of elf is he? He's a wood elf. And these are trees that only grow in this part of Middle-earth. And these are the greatest trees in the world. And he's like, wait, you want me to not see these? No, it's not going to happen. But he eventually does. And they make their way to Cairn Amroth. And they're welcomed there. And then they climb up the tree to the treehouse of Galadriel. It's referred to as a flet. Okay? It's an Old English word. Anglo-Saxon word. All it means is floor. Okay? So they get up there, and it's nice and light, and they see the Lord and Lady, and they're tall and beautiful and waspish, the whole 9 yards. And Celeborn tells Frodo to sit down beside him, and that they'll speak when everybody comes up. They welcome Aragorn and such. We find out it's been 38 years since Aragorn was last here. Gives you an idea of how old he is. Okay, Boromir's not 38. And then they welcome Gimli. Has the names of the individuals preceded them? Did somebody send word? Or does Celeborn just kind of somehow know? It is long indeed since we saw one of Durin's folk in Caras Galadriel, but today we have broken our long law. May it be a sign that though the world is now dark, better days are at hand, and that friendship shall be renewed between our peoples. Now, what kind of opening address is that? Political? Diplomatic? Warming? Encouraging? Comforting? Yes. So they come up. Galadriel speaks and asks about Gandalf. Aragorn says he fell into shadow. Okay. And they keep talking. They mention the Balrog, etc. And then Celeborn says, we long have feared that under Caradhras terror slept. But had I known that the dwarves had stirred up this evil in Moria again, notice, you dreaded dwarves, I would have forbidden you to pass the northern borders, you and all that went with you. And if it were possible, one would say that at the last Gandalf fell from wisdom into folly, going needlessly into the net of Moria. Galadriel, he would be rash indeed that said that thing. Slam! I mean, she just upbraids her husband. Needless were none of the deeds of Gandalf in life. Those that followed him knew not his mind, cannot report his full purpose. And it's almost like she's saying, no, you don't understand. Gandalf knew something else before he entered Moria. This is all part of his grand Dumbledorian design, if you're familiar with Harry Potter. But however it may be with the guide, the followers are blameless. Do not repent of your welcome to the dwarf. I'm sure they didn't say to Gimli, to the dwarf, the token dwarf, as it were. If our folk had been exiled long and far from Lothlórien, who of the Galadriel, even Celeborn the Wise, would pass nigh and would not wish to look upon their ancient home? Come on, answer. If this were your home, you can't tell me you wouldn't want to go in there. And then she gives us this beautiful speech. Dark is the water of Caladzaram, and cold are the springs of Kibelnala, and fair were the many pillared halls of Khazad-dûm in elder days, before the fall of mighty kings beneath the stone. She looks upon Gimli, who sat glowering and sad. He sits there, big frown on his face and stuff, and she smiles. And the dwarf, hearing the names given in his own ancient tongue, looked up and met her eyes. And it seemed to him that he looked suddenly into the heart of an enemy and saw there love and understanding. Notice, it seemed that he looked into the heart of an enemy and saw love and understanding. Now, Tolkien might be making a suggestion there. Think of those twin virtues that we've talked about of pity and mercy. Okay? What does it take to move from pity to mercy? Pity is just a feeling. You look at somebody, homeless, whatever, you feel sorry for them. It takes action, but action born out of what? Love. Love is the transference from pity to an act of mercy. Okay? Not romantic love, but the desire for the well-being of the other individual. Wonder came into his face, and then he smiles. She just melts him like he chisels stone, just melts it away. He rises clumsily, bows. Yet more fair is the living land of Lórien, and the Lady Galadriel is above all the jewels that lie beneath the earth. And it's from that moment Gimli's transformed. Gimli completely changes when it comes to talking about or the relationship between elves and dwarves. Okay? So they keep talking. Galadriel talks about, we know what your quest is. Okay? She says, I was the one who summoned the White Council. I knew somewhat about the designs of Sauron and such. She goes, but don't worry about all that. Tonight, sleep in peace. You don't need to worry. And they make their way off, and, the travelers now kind of have a little huddle to explain how they each felt when they were gazed at by Galadriel. Sam says, if you want to know, I felt as if I haven't got nothing on, and I didn't like it. She seemed to be looking inside me, asking me what I would do if she gave me the chance of flying back home to the Shire to a nice little hole with
There's no garden.
nothing. No, with pause and a bit of garden, or with a bit of garden of my own. See, I think after that first with, I think Sam was going somewhere else. He's thinking rosy cotton. Okay. But he doesn't want to, marry. Yeah, that's how I felt. In other words, their initial reaction is, I felt naked. Who are you alone, nameless, yourself? Naked, as it were. Gimli, seemed to me too that my choice would remain secret and only to myself. Boromir, maybe it was only a test. But I do not feel too sure of this elvish lady and her purposes. Aragorn reproves him. Speak no evil of the Lady Galadriel. You know not what you say. There is inherent in this land no evil unless a man bring it hither himself. Now, Aragorn doesn't say that because he's not sure what's going on in Boromir's mind or heart. He says that because he knows exactly what's going on. Because Boromir already betrayed himself. When?
What talking about the ring?
Council of Elrond. Let's take the ring. Okay. So they remain there for a while. And they sing songs and they're kind of gradually healed and such. And Frodo and Sam, in the chapter of the Mirror of Galadriel, are talking, and Frodo's like, well, Sam, now what do you think of elves? I mean, they were with elves before in Rivendell, but they're not quite the same. He says, now you've been here for a while. What do you think? Well, I reckon there's elves and elves. They're all elvish enough, but they're not all the same. Now, these folk aren't wanderers or homeless. They seem a bit near to the likes of us. They seem to belong here. Like people can belong to the land. More even than the hobbits do in the Shire. And he goes on and says, you know, if there's any magic about, it's right down deep. And Sam couldn't be more right. The magic is down deep. It's in the earth. Not buried. It's part of existence. It's part of the sheer aspect of being. Okay? Frodo, you can see and feel it everywhere. Well, you can't see nobody working it. That is, there's nobody in the background, you know, behind a curtain, moving the levers and punching the buttons. No fireworks like Gandalf's magic. I wonder we don't see nothing of the Lord and Lady in all these days. I fancy now she could do some wonderful elf magic. Frodo, I don't really want to see any magic, and I miss Gandalf. Sam, don't think I'm finding fault. I've often wanted to see a bit of magic, like what it tells of in old tales. But I've never heard of a better land than this. In other words, it's like Sam says, I've often wanted to have somebody come in the classroom and go, you know, Leva Corpus or Leva Bottulus, and the bottle goes, and we all go, ooh. But he seems to be saying where he is more magical. That is, his sheer fact of being in this land has taken on kind of a magical existence. It's like being at home and on a holiday at the same time. What's the problem with vacations? They end. Okay? Have you ever been on a vacation that went on too long? In which case, it's nice to get back home. Okay? Sam is saying this place is like being on holiday and being comfortable. He's not talking about being at home with the pressures of work and the pressures of life. He's meaning being at home when one can really relax. That and holiday together. I don't want to leave. All the same, I'm beginning to feel if we've got to go on, we'd best get it over. In other words, this isn't our final resting place. It's the job that's never started as takes longest to finish, as my old gaffer used to say. Okay? And Galadriel comes walking through the trees, not literally through them, but around them and such. And they take her, she takes them, to her mirror. A little, like, think of it like, like a bird bath. It's got water in it. And Frodo's like, what will we see? Many things I can't command the mirror to reveal. To some I can show what they desire to see, but the mirror will also show things unbidden. Those are often stranger. What you will see if you leave the mirror free to work, I cannot tell. In other words, if you allow the mirror to work, she said, I don't know. And it never hit me before. I've been teaching this for 20 years and reading it for 35 years. But the mirror is exactly like a book. Because all too often, what do we do, especially when you're reading a book for a class? Or, let me rephrase that. Let me close it. As I've had several people say to me about some of their classes, you know, I dislike X, Y, or Z because we can only read, or we're taught to read, or we're forced to read solely from this perspective. Or we look at this work of literature or fairy tale from a psychological perspective, or a sexual perspective, or a psychosexual perspective, or a Freudian perspective, or something like that. Okay? And what every student who's talked about that with me has said is we never just read the book and talk about what the book in and of itself means in terms of the written words on the page. Well, you know, written words on a page set off on an island where there are no readers means nothing. There has to be a reader in order for it to mean. Okay? But what does the reader not have to do? Think of what Tolkien says about allegory and applicability. The reader doesn't have to try to dominate it, to try to force what is there to meet the reader's wants or needs or ends. Rather, the reader, put it this way, can lay flat and let the book act like the ocean and come in and wash over you. And let the book work on your mind rather than you working your mind on the book. For it shows things that were, things that are, and things that yet may be. Which it is, even though eyes cannot always tell. That is what you're seeing, whether it's something that may be or something that was in the past. Can't tell you. So she says, Sam, this is what you'd call magic. Come on, you want to see this, don't you? He says, okay, lady, I'll have a peep. It's almost like Sam is saying, okay, you dared me. I opened my mouth and stuck my foot in it. So what does he tell us? And I not mind a glimpse of what's going on at home. So what has he just told the mirror? Show me what's going on at home. Rather than, yes, I'll have a look to see whatever the mirror may show me. And she says, okay, just don't touch the water. So Sam looks, he says, up stars. Then the stars go out. And then he sees a shining sun, trees waving, Frodo lying with a pale face under a great cliff, Sam going along a passage, Ted Sandyman cutting down trees. Okay. Now Sam noticed that the old mill had vanished and a large red brick building was being put up where it had stood. This is like being ripped right out of Tolkien's childhood. Lots of folk were busily at work, tall red chimney nearby, black smoke pouring out. I mean, that is literally an image straight out of Tolkien's childhood. And he springs away. I can't stay here. I must go home. Why does Sam think he must go home?
He thinks what's in the mirror is true.
He thinks what's in the mirror is true in that it is happening now, possibly will happen in the future. You cannot go home alone. You did not wish to go home without your master before you looked in the mirror, and yet you knew that evil things might well be happening in the Shire. Did he? Did he know that evil things might be happening in the Shire? He was there when Elrond said, I'd like to send Pippin back home, at least to prepare them. He might have known, but he never really thought about it.
Because in his mind, there's a difference between home and where he is now. There's no connection between the two.
True. Remember that the mirror shows many things, not all have yet come to pass. Some never come to be. Some never come to be unless those that behold the visions turn aside from their path to prevent them. In other words, some things never come to be unless you turn aside from the path you've given yourself and thereby create those things. Give me another example of that in literature. Very, very famous story / play. Oedipus the king. Okay? Oedipus gets the word of the Oracle of Delphi. You are fated to kill your father and sleep with your mother. He hears that first by the word of a drunk. Then he goes to the Oracle. The Oracle tells him directly. He runs away. Last thing he wants to do is kill his dad and sleep with his mother. That's kind of disgusting. And in the very fact of running away, he does it. Because he doesn't know the people that he thinks are his mother and father are adopted. Okay? So, Sam sits on the ground, puts his head in his hands, and he has a Frodo moment from the beginning of The Shadow of the Past chapter. I wish I'd never come here, and I don't want to see no more magic. Right? I wish I'd never come here. Come here meaning just the Mirror of Galadriel? Or on this entire trip? But after a while, he speaks again and says, nope, I'll go home by the long road with Mr. Frodo or not at all. In other words, I will see the job through. The job that Elrond gave to him? The job that Gandalf gave to him? No. The job he gave himself. But if I do get back, somebody's going to pay for it. So now Frodo looks. But he asks first, do you advise me to look? She says, no, I do not counsel you one way or the other. I am not a counselor.
Classic elf move.
We'll say yay and nay.
Okay? I'm trying to think how to put this. What is a very smart reason, other than being a classic elf move, for not giving advice or counsel? And let's, do the applicability here, in this world.
That way he doesn't influence what he sees one way or the other.
Okay. Why else?
So you can't get blamed for the outcome if people follow your advice.
Okay, you cannot receive blame if you don't give advice. That's true. Why else?
People need to figure their own way out sometimes.
Keep going.
If all you ever do is rely on the judgment of others, you never learn to think for yourself.
Okay, you're so close to what I'm looking for. You said you won't ever learn to think for yourself. How can I think for someone else? Okay, that's planting ideas into their head. That's influence. But how can I think what would be good for Paul?
You would have to be me.
Bingo. And the only problem with that is I'm not Paul. I'm not any one of you. So to presume to give advice, okay, what did that mean? To see. The vice there comes from visio. To see. That would presume that I could somehow put on your glasses and see the entire world from your perspective, from your background, from your upbringing. I can't do that. I can't even do that with my own kids. Okay? Does that mean I don't give them advice? No, it doesn't mean that. But it does mean I try to be cautious about it. Because, as you said, they've got to make their choices. They've got to decide certain things. They've got to think through. My son's looking at colleges now. I give him advice, he throws it out the door or in the trash can or, wherever it is, which is fine and good because it's going to be his life that he determines on the basis of those choices. So when Frodo asks, do you advise me to look? He's kind of saying, give me some help here. Okay? She says, whether what you see be fair or evil, that may be profitable, and it may not. Talk about she says she's no counselor. Man, she ought to have the little diploma hanging on the wall that says, PhD in BS, because she's pretty good at it. I don't know. How does that make you feel, Frodo? Tell me. So Frodo looks. And he sees a figure. We're going to skip a lot of this. And then he sees an eye. An eye draws him. And he gets pulled closer and closer and closer to the water until Galadriel says, don't touch the water. The vision fades. And then she says, I know what it was that you last saw. Notice, is she standing off to the side here? Frodo's standing, looking in, and she sees it from a distance? No. But she knows what Frodo saw. Why? Do not think that only by singing amid the trees, nor even by the slender arrows of elven bows, is this land of Lothlórien maintained and defended against its enemy. I perceive the Dark Lord and know his mind, or all of his mind that concerns the elves. Okay, so how does she do this? And he gropes ever to see me and my thought. She lifts up her arms, spreads out her hands towards the east in a gesture of rejection and denial. Tolkien's too classy for this, but maybe she gives him the middle salute. And Eärendil, the evening star, most beloved of the elves, shone clear above. So bright was it that the figure of the elven lady cast a dim shadow on the ground. Its rays, that is the rays of the star, glanced the ring about her finger. It glittered and polished like gold overlaid with silver light and a white stone, and it twinkled. Frodo gazed, and bing, the light bulb goes off. And she goes, pretty smart there. It is not permitted to speak of it, and Elrond could not do so, but it cannot be hidden from the ring bearer and one who has seen the eye. Verily, it's in the land of Lórien, upon the finger of Galadriel, that one of the three remains. This is Ninya, the ring of adamant, and I am its keeper. So he now knows where one of the three elven rings is. He suspects, points off to the east, but he doesn't know. So how is it Frodo can know? He's got the one ring. He is kind of, as Pippin called him earlier, the Lord of the Rings. He is Lord in the sense of one of the meanings of the Old English word that Tolkien got that phrase from, the guardian, the protector. All right? So Frodo says, what do you want? Because she tells him what's going to happen. If you succeed, then our power is diminished, and Lothlórien will fade, and the tides of time will sweep it away. So Frodo's like, well, what do you want me to do then? Because if I destroy the ring, you're a goner. That what should be, shall be. Well, what's that supposed to mean? Does that mean that the ring should be destroyed? It's pretty clear from the Council of Elrond, yes. Does that mean that Lothlórien should fade? Probably. Because how has Lothlórien been preserved?
By the power of that ring.
By the power of the rings, yeah.
So even though it is natural, it is magical, it is elvish, it is wonderful, it is great, it is beautiful, it is in a certain sense artificial.
It is artificial. And it's unnatural in that sense. Okay? So she says, the love of the elves for their land and their works is deeper than the deeps of the sea, etc. But they'll cast all that away rather than submit to Sauron. She says, if I could wish something, since you asked me what I wish it had never been made. Well, golly gee, get in line with the whole rest of the world. With Frodo and Bilbo at the front. Because You are wise and fearless and fair. Wise, fearless, and she's a knockout. That's what fair means. Beautiful, drop dead gorgeous, said Frodo. I will give you the One Ring if you ask for it. It is too great a matter for me. Frodo offers her the ring. Is that Frodo only? Or might the ring be trying to get home? Because what happens if Galadriel says, sure, I'll take it?
Then she'll definitely use it.
Yeah, she'll definitely use it and the alarm bell will ring in Barad-dûr. And, Sauron will know. She laughs, she holds her hands up, she seems to grow big and tall and evil, etc. And then she dwindles and says, I pass the test, I will diminish and go into the west and remain Galadriel. What test is it that she passes? I mean, obviously, she doesn't take the One Ring. Is there another test?
Well, it could be argued that this is what gets her back over the sea.
Yes. And that's relating to this other possible test I'm trying to pull out of you. By what light does Frodo see her? The light of Eärendil. What is the light of Eärendil? It's a Silmaril. Okay? That whole Fëanorian curse is brought back up. So, Frodo asks, I'm permitted to wear the One Ring. Why can't I see all the others and know the thoughts of those that wear them? You haven't tried. So she kind of plants that idea. Try it. Only thrice have you set the ring upon your finger since you knew what you possessed. Well, how does she know that? Because she wears a ring. And whenever Frodo puts the ring on, a ring bearer of one of the three that Sauron never touched knows. Okay? Just kind of let that hang there. Do not try, she tells him. It would destroy you. Did not Gandalf tell you that the rings give power according to the measure of each possessor? And what she means by that is, you're a midget. You're not very big and powerful. So it's only going to give you a little bit of power. Before you could use that power, you would need to become far stronger and to train your will to the domination of others. Now, we didn't talk about this part, but in the fairy story essay, Tolkien talks about the difference between magic and enchantment. Enchantment, like fairy and drama produces, shared enrichment. Magic, he says, is something completely different. Magic is the domination of wills and things, such as levitelephonus, to make the phone levitate. What would that be? Domination over laws of physics. Domination over this thing. Levicorpus, to make a person float. Domination over that person. Imperious, taking away that person's will. Okay? That's what a magician does. A magician breaks, violates, bends the laws, the physical laws of the universe, to take control. Right? But even so, she says, one that is born on the finger, seeing that which is hidden, your sight has grown keener. You perceive my thought more clearly than many that are accounted wise. You saw the eye of him that holds the 7 and the 9. Did you not see and recognize the ring upon my finger? And she turns to Sam, did you see my ring? He goes, I don't know what you're talking about. What ring? Okay. So, we go on. Farewell to Lothlórien. They leave. And before they leave, what do the people of Lothlórien give them?
Lovely parting gifts.
Nice parting gifts. Okay? They all get a nice fashionable elven cloak with a nice silver brooch, okay, to fasten that elven cloak. They all get limbus or whey bread. Think of this as MREs, okay? That probably taste a little bit better.
Marty's aren't bad.
And then we get some more specialized gifts. What, for example, does Boromir receive?
Golden belt.
Think Boromir. Think kind of person he is. If he had TV, he'd probably go home at night, throw back a beer or 2 or 6, and put on WWF. And that's what he gets. A great big, shiny gold belt. Okay? Tells you where he treasures things, or what he places emphasis on. What does Sam get? Rope.
Also the box.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a moment. Okay? But he gets rope. What does Legolas get? A new bow and bowstring. And it's like, the arrow fired from this bow will never miss its target. That's kind of cool to have. What does Aragorn get? This is pretty useful, given his family history.
Sheath,
That,
apparently, and a warranty on his sword.
okay, the sword drawn from this sheath will never break. His great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-granddaddy could have used that, because the sword drawn from that sheath broke. Okay? Merry and Pippin, nothing special, because they're nothing special. Okay? They get the cloaks and the brooches and stuff.
They get belts too, don't they?
Yeah. Gimli,
Oh, he gets
Lock
Galadriel's
Mirror.
hair.
nothing at first. Right? Sam gets the box with dirt and a few seeds. But Gimli gets nothing. And he's like, everybody always forgets about me because I'm a dwarf. Nobody likes dwarfs. And Galadriel's like, what's wrong, Gimli? It's like, well, she goes, okay, what do you want? Name it. And Gimli says, well, none. It's enough for me to have seen the lady of Galadriel and have heard her gentle words. She goes, okay, no, this isn't good enough. All I need now is for some dwarf to go off to the land of the dwarves and say, oh, well, she gave me her words and that was beautiful. But, she goes, no, you shall not be the only guest without a gift. He goes, nothing. No, okay. Name it. 3 strands of your hair. She's like, what? And the elves are ready to slit his throat, and got him, etc. What would you do with such a gift? Notice all the other gifts are practical. They're things you can do things with. We haven't talked about Frodo's yet, but we will. He would treasure it. He would encase it in imperishable crystal, and it would be the heirloom of his family. No practical use whatsoever. He can't take that hair and when they're at the Battle of Helm's Deep, be like Jack Sparrow and, weave it into a bullwhip or something, and kill orcs or anything. Not going to happen. He's got that hair stuck in his pocket somewhere. And she says, these words shall go with the gift. I do not foretell, for all foretelling is now vain. On the one hand lies darkness, and the other only hope. But if hope should not fail, then I say to you, Gimli, son of Glóin, that your hands shall flow with gold, and over you gold shall have no dominion. And finally she comes to Frodo. And she gives him a little glass jar with a nice little chain that he can wear around his neck. And she says, in this vial, caught the light of Erendil's star, set amid the waters of my fountain. It will shine still brighter when night is about you. May it be a light to you in dark places, like a lamp unto your feet. Psalm, whatever it is. Remember Galadriel and her mirror. And Frodo's kind of like, oh, shucks. And they go. Okay? We get to chapter The Great River.
Out there, there's a great thing, it's history of Middle-earth. Forget what volume, somewhere between 10 and 12, where Fëanor asks Galadriel for some of her hair, and she tells him what to do with himself.
Oh, see, I didn't.
So Gimli's, I think he wrote that after he wrote LOTR, but I think he
Okay.
definitely wanted to frame that.
Okay. So they make their way along the Great River. They know they're still being followed by Gollum, and we get to chapter of the Breaking of the Fellowship, which I have to do quickly. So they come to Parth Galen, and Frodo's like, I need some time, give me an hour. And Aragorn's like, okay, you have an hour. Frodo wanders off. You know, they're on the border almost of Mordor. And here Frodo's wandering off in the woods. And Aragorn says, okay, don't stray far or out of call. So Frodo wanders on along, and he runs into Boromir. Boromir tries to take the ring. I'm going to skip a whole bunch. And Frodo says, no, the council laid it on me. He didn't actually, but that's what he says. And he puts on the ring to get away from Boromir. Boromir rather quickly realizes the error of his ways. It says, what have I said? What have I done? Frodo, Frodo, come back. A madness took me, but it is past. Come back. Frodo's like, don't think so. So Frodo keeps running up the mountain. Boromir starts to go back the other way. Boromir goes back. The others are still talking. Sam goes, where's Boromir? Because Sam doesn't trust him. Boromir tells Aragorn, I saw Frodo and I don't want to say anything else. Everything's going helter-skelter. Okay? But Frodo runs all the way up to the top. And at the top of the mountain, here's the mountain, is a big stone chair. Frodo sits in it. It's called Amon Hen. Seat of seeing. And he sits there, and he still has the ring on. And what are we told? He seemed to be in a world of mist. This is page 400. In a world of mist. And then here and there, the mist gives way. And what does he see? He can see all the way up to the land of the Beornings. And he sees fire. He sees orcs pouring out of the misty mountains. Okay? He sees Rowan and Orthanc, the pinnacle of Isengard. Southward he looks. And he looks towards Mordor. He sees riders on the fields of Rowan. And suddenly, as he looks towards Mordor, he sees Barad-dûr, fortress of Sauron. All hope left him. This is like he's now suddenly playing Dante. And he's getting ready in the Inferno to enter hell. Because hell has written above its gates, abandon hope all ye who enter here. Okay? He sees Sauron's fortress and says, I'm a goner. And then he feels the eye. And the eye is triangulating. Because Frodo's here, and there's like another mountain over here, and there's another mountain over here, and it's like, bing, bing, and it's getting closer. He heard himself crying out, never, never, or was it, verily I come to you. Never noticed that before either. Verily I come to you. Who's the I? The ring. Never, never, Frodo. He could not tell. Then as a flash from some other point of power, there came to his mind another thought. Take it off. Take it off. Fool, take it off. Take off the ring. Now, of all the characters that we have met, who seems to be wont to call other people fool? Fool of a took, you know. The two powers strove in him. And Frodo was suddenly aware of himself again, neither the voice nor the eye. He was free to choose. Okay. Notice what that says. There are powers around Frodo that he can be influenced by, but he is free to choose. And he takes the ring off. And he can no longer see or feel the eye, but he knows, I got to get out of here. So he heads back down to the boats. He's going to ditch everybody. Then we hear all the conversation. Boromir runs off after the two hobbits. Legolas goes off one direction with Gimli. Sam makes off up the road after where Boromir had gone and then comes back, jumps in the water, and Frodo rescues him. And they go off to Mordor. So we see the breaking of the Fellowship. We've got Gandalf dead, not mostly dead, dead. We have Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and to some extent Boromir still. We have Merry and Pippin have gone running off, so they're kind of alone. And then we have Sam and Frodo. So the 9 that were one have now become 1, 2, 3, 4 that are completely separate. Okay? And then we're going to see this break again when Boromir dies. So we now have to wait a few months, and then finally the next book is published. And you get the chapter, The Departure of Boromir. Now, departure's a nice word. Why? What does it mean? He got on the next train. He took the next flight. He just left. It's not the death of Boromir. Tolkien doesn't want to telegraph too much with the titles. Okay? So they hear the horn of Boromir. They find Boromir nearly dead. And Boromir tells Aragorn, second page, I tried to take the ring from Frodo. I am sorry. I have paid. He's paid what? Paid the price for his foolishness? They have gone, the halflings, the orcs have taken them. I think they are not dead. Orcs bound them. Farewell, Aragorn. Go to Minas Tirith and save my people. I have failed. He thinks he's failed. Does he mean that personally? That he is personally a complete failure, or that he has failed his people? I think it's more his people. Aragorn, though, no. And this is something I think they do very well in the film. This one scene, not Boromir fighting off 100,000 orcs by himself and stuff, but this one little, 10-second scene. When Aragorn takes Boromir's hand and kisses his brow, says, no, you have conquered. What does he mean? Is it because of the dead orcs? What has he conquered?
His intention to take the ring.
His intention to take the ring. I heard somebody else say something. Himself. His greed. Okay. How has he conquered those? Not only by saying, Frodo, stop, come back. It was a madness that took me. Because what would happen if the ring came in his presence again? That madness would creep back up. So how has he really conquered?
Rather than going after the ring, he decided to stay and defend Pippin and Merry.
How does he defend Pippin and Merry? What does he do? He dies for them. He dies for them. He sacrifices himself. Does that save them? No. Doesn't mean a sacrifice has got to be successful. But Aragorn says, no, you've conquered. You won. And Boromir smiles and dies. Okay? Kind of like in Monty Python, if you're familiar with the scene. So, Legolas and Gimli sing some songs. Legolas and Aragorn sing some songs from the north and the west and the south. And Gimli says, you left me in the east. And Aragorn says, no, we're not going to sing that song. So, they take Boromir's body, they channel their inner Vikings, put it in a boat, load it up with all the dead treasure, the treasure of the dead and such, put them in the boat and sail them down the falls of Rauros. Notice what they don't do. They don't light them on fire, okay? We don't actually have much evidence that the Vikings actually did that. For one pretty good reason. You send a boat off into the ocean, light it on fire, what's left? Not a whole lot. And
Charcoal.
wet charcoal, which after a few hundred years gets eaten up by bugs and critters in the ocean. Okay, boats that they actually buried or boats that they actually put in peat bogs, yeah, those survived. Those survived very well. One was discovered just a couple of years ago, about a 100-foot long Viking longboat. So they decide, now what can we do? Boromir is dead. Sam and Frodo, they've gone into the no man's land. And it's like Aragorn's, he's out of our hair. Can't do anything about him. He's chosen his road. So these three decide they're going to go after these two. Why?
They've been captured by
They're captured by orcs.
Also, because Boromir died to save them, they're honoring him by continuing on.
Yep. And from what do they know? From what they know, what direction were they headed? Towards Minas Tirith, which Aragorn has already said, that's where I'm going. Okay? So we get the chapter The Riders of Rohan. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli run. And the orcs don't stop. They don't stop when the sun comes out. These are not your average ordinary orcs. These are Nazi orcs. These are super orcs. Okay? Orcs bred to not worry of the sun. And Legolas is like, they're getting farther and farther ahead of us, and then one morning they wake up and the sunrise is red, which can mean storm's coming, or it can also be symbolic of there's been a battle. And Legolas says, well, those riders are coming our way. So the three hunters sit out on the grass, literally, and cover themselves up with their cloaks, and the riders just ride right by. Tells you how good elven cloaks blend in with the surroundings. And as the leader, and quite a few of them ride by, Aragorn then stands up and cries out, what news from the north? They circle the wagons, proverbially, and point their spears at Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. And they talk a little bit. Aragorn tells him his name, but he doesn't say Aragorn, son of Arathorn, future king of Gondor. Kneel, he says. Well, I'm just called Strider. Out here hunting orcs, me and my buddies. The rider leaps from his horse and says, I thought you were orcs, but you're not. He goes, Strider, that's no name for a man. How did you escape us? Are you elvish? No, only one's an elf, the other's a dwarf, but we have the favor of the Lady of the Wood. Then there is a lady in the Golden Wood. Few escape her nets. These are strange days. But if you have her favor, then you also are net weavers and sorcerers, maybe. Why do you not speak, silent ones? And he looks at Legolas and Gimli. Gimli rises, and they can't really tell. Plants his feet firmly apart, like, that's supposed to scare them. His hand gripped the handle of his axe, his eyes flash. Give me your name, horse master, and I will give you mine and more besides. And the rider's like, ooh. As for that, stranger should declare himself first. Yet I'm named Eomer, son of Eomen. I'm called the third Marshal of Riddermark. Then Eomer, son of Eomund, third Marshal of Riddermark, let Gimli the dwarf Glóin's son warn you against foolish words. So he's just called a guy who has 110 soldiers with him a fool. Not a smart way to enter into this negotiation. You speak evil of that which is fair beyond the reach of your thought, and only little wit can excuse you. Unpack that. You speak evil of that which is fair beyond the reach of your thought. You can only think so high. In other words, pretty much calling him down. And only little wit short brains, small brains, can't excuse you. Eomer's eyes blaze. The men of Rowan murmur angrily. They close in, advancing their spears. I would cut off your beard and all, Master Dwarf, if it stood but a little higher from the ground. In other words, if I could reach it without having to bend over. Legolas says he stands not alone and knocks an arrow before they can blink. And they're like, okay. And says, you'd be dead before your stroke fell. Aragorn realizes things aren't going so well. And springs between them. Puts himself between Legolas and Gimli and Eomer. Okay?
He's been trying to play this stuff cool. And his hot-headed friends are not going to allow him to do it that way.
Exactly. Okay? So, Aragorn says, won't you hear us before you kill us? Yes, but don't be smartasses. I mean, that's essentially what Eomer says. Tell me your right name. Aragorn, first tell me whom you serve. Okay? Are you friend or foe of Sauron? Dark Lord of Mordor. Now, this is an interesting question. First, tell me whom you serve. I serve only the Lord of the Mark. What does that show on Eomer's part? He's not the king. He's not the Lord. He's not the highest one in his society. He is subservient to another. All right? We do not serve the power of the Dark Land, but nor are we in open war with them. And here's why. We desire only to be free and to live as we have lived, keeping our own, serving no foreign lord, good or evil. In other words, if you had to put him in an American political context, he's a good old country boy libertarian. Just get the government out of my face. Just,
Isolationist, for sure.
yeah, he's an isolationist. He's, we don't want to get involved in all this foreign stuff. Just leave us alone. Let us, depending on what part of the country you're from, grow our pot, drink our moonshine, just, leave us alone.
He's a big puppet.
Kind of. Because this is kind of classical Middle English, meaning like the Midlands of English mentality. Tolkien talks about this somewhat in his letters. So he says, who are you? Whom do you serve? You ask me. Now you tell me, who do you serve? And who said you could hunt in our land? In other words, you must have broken through our borders. Aragorn, I serve no man. Ooh, kind of high and mighty, don't you think? But the servants of Sauron I pursue into whatever land they may go. Let's do a little applicability. Let's update the War of the Ring to the War on Terror. Aragorn is kind of like saying, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, I don't care where your borders are between all your stands. If somebody's in Pakistan and they go into Afghanistan, or they're in Afghanistan and they go into Pakistan, we're going to follow you. It doesn't matter where you go. I will follow you. I will hunt you down. Borders don't, America. Borders don't mean anything. There are few among mortal men who know more of orcs. In other words, you tell me I don't know what I'm doing hunting orcs. It's like, he's going to do the old movie thing. Come here, son. Let me show you my scars from hunting orcs, and this. I do not hunt them in this fashion out of choice. The orcs whom we pursued took captives, blah, 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 blah. He says, and by the way, I'm not weaponless. And he does the flourish where he throws his cloak back, whips out his sword. The elven sheath glittered as he grasped it. The bright blade of Andúril shone like a sudden flame as he swept it out. He cries, Elendil, and then he, really lays it on thick. I am Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and am called Elisar the Elfstone, Dunedain, the heir of Isildur, Elendil, son of Gondor. Did you get all that down, or do you need me to repeat it? You asked, who am I? That's who am I. Here is the sword that was broken and is forged again. Will you aid me or thwart me? Choose swiftly. Put that in a modern context. A guy shows up in the middle of England. You know, there is let's say there's some radical Muslim outbreak, because I don't mean to be too political here, but the majority of Muslims in England are radicalized. I mean, crazy radicalized. It would be like some guy suddenly standing up, whipping out a sword and saying, here's Excalibur. And it really being Excalibur. Okay, that's the part you have to wrap your mind around. Because this sword has been gone for 1,500 years. Gimli and Legolas are like, whoa, never saw Aragorn like this. He seemed to have grown in stature while Éomer had shrunk. For a moment it seemed to the eyes of Legolas, who is a dwarf, that a white flame flickered on the brows of Aragorn like a shining crown. Like the elf stone worn by his great-great-grandpappy up in the sky, Eärendil. Éomer steps back, look of awe in his face, and he looks at the ground. Why? I'm not worthy. These are indeed strange days. Dreams and legends spring to life out of the grass. Dreams. The once and future king, future, back. The sword that was broken, back. Lady of the Golden Wood, she's real. Dwarves and elves walking hand in hand through the fields of Rohan, weird. So what doom do you bring out of the north? What judgment are you bringing? The doom of choice. And this, I think, is one of the major themes throughout. Tolkien, I think, wants to suggest we all have a choice. We all have many choices. We can choose in these great, geopolitical battles which side to be on. But what can't we choose? We can't choose to be Switzerland. We can't say, no, I'm just going to sit in my little home and arm it to the gills and pretend that everything out there doesn't impact me. The doom of choice. You can say this to Théoden. Open war lies before him, with Sauron or against him. What is it Anakin Skywalker says in Return of the Sith? No, it's not Anakin, it's Obi-Wan. Only the Sith deal in absolutes. Okay? Not true, by the way, because, that very statement is an absolute itself, so that makes Obi-Wan a Sith. None may now live as they have lived, and few shall keep what they call their own. In other words, their war is afoot, and you will get brought into it. But what can you do? You can choose how and what manner you are brought in. This is almost exactly like the scene in the Harry Potter novels when Harry realizes either he must die or Lord Voldemort must die. And then later when he realizes, sorry to give this away for those of you who haven't read it, he must die. And he realizes he has a choice. He can face death as a man, head held high, and he can accept that he must die, or he can be dragged kicking and screaming. Right? Few can now do these things. He says, but of these great matters we'll speak later. So, what can you tell us about our friends? And they can't tell anything. And Gimli says, you misunderstand. They be halflings. They're like children. And one of the writers goes, halflings, come on, halflings. They're only a little people in old songs and children's tales out of the north. Two walking legends around the green earth in the daylight. And I kind of always, if I were filming this, I'd have here's where I would add to Tolkien. I know. I would have Aragorn go, legend. Heir of the king. A man may do both. For not we, but those who come after will make the legends of our time. When people think they are legends in their own time, we tend to call them what? Arrogant? Full of hubris? Okay? And that's when, at least in Greek society, the gods generally zap you. I mean, you get what you have coming. So Aragorn says, no, legends are made by the people that come after. The green earth, mighty matter of legend, though you tread it under the light of day. In other words, he's saying, there's all kinds of legends about the earth. Okay? They're going to meet one, hopefully, in a few minutes. Treebeard. Aragorn's going to go, Ints? You mean those old wives' tales? And Legolas is going to go, those aren't old wives' tales. Man, I would dearly love to see an Ent again. Okay? So they talk for a bit more. And Aragorn, skipping a couple pages, Aragorn tells them, we can't abandon our friends while hope remains. Éomer, there is no hope. Believe me, nobody's alive that was in that group that we met. Killed them all. All right? Then what happened to them? Éomer, I don't know. Maybe they were among the slain and got burned. But they were attired as we are. Ha, you missed us. Oh, hadn't forgotten about that. It is hard to be sure of anything among so many marvels. Yes, it is. It's almost like the fairy story essay on the passage on recovery, saying, look, open your eyes, see the real world. The world is all grown strange. Has it really, though? No. It's just he's seeing it from a different perspective, in a different light. Elf and dwarf and company walk in our fields. Folk speak with the lady of the wood and yet live. The sword comes back to war that was broken. How shall a man judge what to do in such times? He's saying, I don't know what to do. Help me. Aragorn, as he has ever judged. Good and ill have not changed since yesteryear, nor are they one thing among elves and dwarves and another among men. Tolkien is not a cultural relativist or an epistemological relativist. Tolkien says, there is good, there is evil. Yes, is there a spectrum between them? Yeah. Are there some people who are mostly good, but they've got a tinge of evil? Boromir? Yes. Are there some people who are mostly evil and have a tinge of good? Anakin Skywalker? Yes. Even Saruman? Yes. Okay? It is a man's part to discern them. That is, it is a man's job to discern between right and wrong, good and evil. As much in the Golden Wood, perilous realm, fantasy land, as in his own house. Or you could put that another way. You've got to be able to discern between good and evil if you're off on the battlefield as well as in your own home. I just read a story the other day. Not a story, a news account. Frightening one. Guy in Connecticut has his neighbor, single woman, calls him because she thinks she's being robbed. There's somebody outside her house with a mask on. He gets his shotgun, goes outside, sees the person, yells at him. The person turns, looks like he's turning with a weapon, something shiny in his hand. Guy blows him away, goes up to him, pulls the mask off, and it's his teenage son. Okay? Talk about discerning good and evil, discerning what to do in your own home as well as somewhere else. Elmer, yeah, I understand all that, but he says, I don't doubt you, nor the deed which my heart would tell me to do. He says, my heart tells me to let you go, but I'm not free to do as I would. Would there means wish. Why? Because he's under somebody else's authority. He is saying, I am answerable to the laws of the land. So what might Tolkien be suggesting? Maybe there are times when you have to go against the laws of the land. Okay? Think Martin Luther King. Think Henry David Thoreau not paying taxes. Okay? The whole civil disobedience thing. Aragorn, I don't think your law was made for such a chance. Nor indeed am I a stranger. I've spoken with Amon your father, and with Théoden son of Fangorn. Never in former days would any high lord of this land have constrained someone like me. Yet what happens later when Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and Gandalf, yes, he does come back, go to Edoras? What do they find has happened with Éomer? He's been thrown into jail. Okay? So, he lets them go. They give him a horse, or horses to ride. And we get chapter 3, the Uruk-hai. Now notice what Tolkien does. So in Two Towers, first we follow Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. We don't do anything with Boromir because he's dead for good. Then we're going to follow Merry and Pippin. Then we're going to go back to Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. We're going to get Gandalf thrown in the mix. And then they're going to go off, and then Gandalf's going to get separated again, and then we're going to go back to Merry and Pippin. And then eventually Gandalf and Pippin are going to go off this way. Merry's going to get left alone with Théoden. These three are going to go off on their own. And we get the breaking of the fellowship keeps breaking. Keeps getting more disjointed. Okay? So we're going to skip the Uruk-hai. And go on to Treebeard, who is modeled after C.S. Lewis, by the way. Or at least his voice is. The big, booming voice. So we see Merry and Pippin escape from the Uruk-hai and stuff, and they go into the forest of Fangorn. And Pippin says, I almost like the forest. They get up on that outcrop of rock, and they look around, and then they hear this voice. Almost felt you like the forest. That's good. That's good. And they meet Treebeard. And Treebeard doesn't know where to put them in his list, so Pippin helps him. And he takes them off to his home. After they tell him Gandalf's dead, notice he doesn't correct them. Takes them off to his home and tells them stories, and they tell him about Saruman. And we see the Entmoot. And we see the Ents go to war. Skipping a whole lot. And we get chapter 5, the White Rider. Okay? Where Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli now go to the edge of Fangorn. They pick through all the remains of the dead of the orcs and such. And they find the hobbit tracks leading off to the forest. And they go in and they see this old geezer. Old guy in gray. And they chat with him for a bit. 493, 494. They are assuming that it's Saruman. And in the middle of 494, the old man turns away, goes up towards a heap of fallen stones, and as if a spell had been removed, the others relaxed and stirred. Gimli picks up his axe, Aragorn draws his sword, Legolas picks up his bow. The old man takes no notice, sits down on a stone. His cloak kind of moves, and they see a shining white. Gimli thinks, Saruman said that he's no longer Saruman the White, but Saruman of many colors. Saruman! And the first person to recognize him is whom? Legolas. Legolas. Why? Because Legolas, being an elf, has a better view, as it were, of the other side. He recognizes Gandalf's, for lack of a better word, glory. Mithrandir, Mithrandir. And they talk, and he says, I am white. Indeed, I am Saruman, one might almost say, Saruman as he should have been. I passed through fire and deep water since we parted. I've forgotten much I thought I knew, learned much that I've forgotten. And they talk and talk and talk. Okay. Gandalf explains to them about Merry and Pippin and how they've roused the Ents. Ents. And there's truth in the old legends about the dwellers in the deep forest. I thought they were only a memory of ancient days, if indeed they were ever more than a legend of Rohan. Okay? Legolas. Legend? Come on, Aragorn, you were the one just talking about, walking in the earth and such. So, he tells them what happened when he fought the Balrog. Middle of 502, Gandalf says, I threw down my enemy, and he fell from the high place and broke the mountainside where he smote it in his ruin. Then darkness took me, and I strayed out of thought and time. I wandered far in roads that I will not tell. Naked I was sent back for a brief time until my task is done. And when he says naked, he means naked. He had no clothes. So that when Gwaihir the Windlord picks him up off the top of Mount Caradhras, he's naked. Takes him to Galadriel, she puts clothes on him. Okay? So what does it mean when it says, darkness took me, I strayed out of thought and time? How do you stray out of time? Pretty much only one way.
Die.
Yeah. You leave time. Okay? And so he brings words to them from Galadriel. Gimli's like, she didn't have any words for me. Legolas, be glad, Gimli. Dark are her words. What are her words for Legolas? Beware the sound of the sea. Because if he once hears the sound of the ocean, he'll never want to go back to the woods again. And Gandalf says, oh yeah, she did have words for you, Gimli. To Gimli, son of Glóin, give his lady's greeting. Lock-bearer, wherever thou goest, my thought goes with thee. And Gimli, what? Starts to sing and dance a jig, or caper, if you want. Okay? He sang loudly in the loud dwarf tongue, we're told. Why? It's just my own reading. I think Gimli has a bit of a crush on Galadriel. And he's thinking that she's thinking, wherever he is, a little bit of her thought is with him. Okay? So we go to the king of the Golden Hall. I'm so far behind, why not? And I always forget to do this. Hold on just 1 second. And we hear these lines. Chanted by Aragorn. Where now the horse and the rider? Where is the horn that was blowing? Where is the helm and the hauberk and the bright hair flowing? Where is the hand on the harp string and the red fire glowing? Where is the spring and the harvest and the tall corn growing, etc., etc. In the film version of that, they have Aragorn chant that in Old English, in Anglo-Saxon. which I'm going to pull up the source for it, which is from the Old English poem, The Wanderer. Take my 3010 class and you'll get more Old English than you probably ever want. Beginning around line 93. Where quam married, where quam mago, where quam madam yiva, where quam simbla yisetu, where sinden celadramas, eala berchbuna, eala bernwiga, eala thednus thrim, who se frag ya what, ye nap under nichtum, swa hell no era. Okay? It's what's called the ubi sunt motif, where are in Latin. Okay? It's a very famous motif that you see in a lot of literature, even up to not quite almost our day and age, but at least up to the late 60s. Peter, Paul, and Mary sang a song called Where Have All the Flowers Gone? Okay? That is largely based on this idea. So they make their way to Edoras, and they're told to leave their weapons outside. Gandalf says, fine, but I'm not leaving I'm not going to leave my old stick. You're going to make an old man. You come out here. You know. So he goes inside with his stick. And picking up on 5:14. Gandalf addresses Wormtongue. The wise speak only of what they know, Grima, son of Galmad, a witless worm have you become. Therefore be silent and keep your forked tongue behind your teeth. I have not passed through fire and death to bandy crooked words with a serving man, and lightning, sunlight's blotted out from the eastern windows. Grima's, I told that fool Hama to take his stick away. So what does Gandalf do at that point? Calls forth Théoden, stands him in front of him, points his stick at him, and performs an exorcism, like in the half-assed film. No! He doesn't do anything like that. What does he
Turns
do?
the lights up.
Turns the lights back up. He says, Théoden, do you ask for help? Points to a window, the light comes back through. Not all is dark. Take courage, for better help you will not find. I no counsel have I to give to those that despair. Why? Because if they despair, counsel won't do any good. If there is no hope whatsoever, put a bullet through your brain. That's essentially what he is saying. Will you hear them? That is the word and age he could give. They're not for all ears. Here, let's do this. Let's go outside. There's a reason why he wants to take him outside the confines of Medicil and get him out the door. What is one thing he will experience outside that he does not experience in there?
The people that are loyal to him.
Okay, that possibly, Autumn? Reality? How about, a very common, ordinary thing? A breeze. A simple breeze. He looks up, and there's a sky, and it's not dark. He looks down below, and he sees green fields. He sees rain. He's going to see sunshine break through from the clouds. So Théoden goes forth, and he sees these things. And he sees Éowyn. And now Gandalf says, look on your land. Breathe the free air again. You want to talk about recovery? A regaining of a clear view? I mean, think about it like this. This is what it's like normally for Théoden in Edoras, or in Medicil. Okay? Gandalf says, go outside. Open your eyes. See, experience. And we get this beautiful description. And we'll wait. No, we can wait. We'll pick up there with 5:15 on